afternoon. It's McCollum on Business. I'm Stephen McCollum, and for the next 30 minutes or so, we'll get you updated on what's happening around the business world. We are coming up on the longest government shutdown ever here. We'll have that update for you coming up here as well. And, of course, we do Market Watch, stocks we're paying attention to, and we have a cryptocurrency alarm here today, as well as for Bitcoin. We'll talk about here in just a minute. The local, national stories you need to know. All that and more coming up here. And let's get started with that Market Watch. Everything is in sell-off mode today, and it's not even close to kind of what we're looking at here in sell-offs, right? It's not a small sell-off happening as the day is going on as well. AI stock valuations are a big concern. Palantir is leading the decline in terms of individual stocks also here as what we're looking at for this sell-off. So a lot of the concerns on the spending around artificial intelligence is the biggest thing happening right now, and at least that's what they're blaming it towards. The Dow Jones right now down that 244 points for it. 47,076 is where that's at here today. The S&P 500 is down 68 points right now to 6786. Nasdaq's down 416 points to 23,417. The small cap index, Russell 2K, down 32 points, 33 points as it just changed to that. 2439 for the Russell 2K. And then Bitcoin, it went below 100,000 for the first time since June, right before showtime. Well, it's back up to the 101,394 as of right now, but did dip below 100,000. As I said, first time since June for Bitcoin here today. 5,200 points down here today after being in that 107,000 range yesterday at the end of the day. So everything in sell-off mode here today. Is it just a one-day deal like we've been dealing with lately, or is it going to be more than that? We'll have to kind of pay attention to what's happening. Stocks that we're paying attention to today, not a lot of bright spots out there. Market has changed in the last couple hours, and we'll see if some of these stocks stay where they were before or possibly have gotten worse. But first one we're going to look at is Denny's here as well. You know Denny's, that diner, look at that, 50% up right now for Denny's. 50%, folks, up to a whopping $6.17, as you see on your screen there. Well, Denny's announced that it would be acquired by a private equity firm. That private equity firm is called Tri-Artisan Capital Advisors. Denny's is being purchased for $620 million, which comes out to $6.25 per shares. It's an all-cash deal as well for this company. The deal represents a 52% premium. Well, not now, obviously. It's not as close to there, but it was a 52% premium from Monday's close for Denny's. It's expected to close in the first quarter of next year. So Denny's going with a private equity firm, which quite frankly just means price increases, and they're going to suck all of the money out of Denny's. And we'll see if it survives after that with these private equity companies getting their money back at that point. But Denny's up 50%. Here today. Next up, Hertz is what we're going to look at. Car rental company, as you know. It is considered one of those meme stocks as well, just like Beyond Meat, for instance. Well, they're up big today as well. 38.97% was up around the 45% range earlier today as well. Better than expected third quarter results for Hertz. They posted a profit of 12 cents per share. For them, the expectation was 3 cents per share is all that people were expecting. Hertz came in at $2.48 billion in revenue. The expectation was only $2.39 billion. So Hertz also a big takeoff. With being a meme stock, those tend to generate a little bit more, as we've seen with, like, for instance, Beyond Meat. 39.07% up right now for Hertz Global Holdings as we're looking at that. And then you got Sarepta Therapeutics. Not everything's good out there in the world with the sell-off happening. Well, this company's down 32.35% right now. They're a biotechnology company. Well, they said a late-stage study testing 2 gene-targeted therapies for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Well, that drug did not meet its main goal. Not good news here for a company developing new drugs. So that's why they're down 32.60% here today. And I told you Palantir Technology is leading the decline as the day is going on in terms of the stock market. Don't have the graph for you here because this is a newer development on the day. But Palantir is down around 8% here today. Their fiscal fourth quarter earnings and revenue beat estimates, but it raised its current quarter and full year revenue guidance. So why is it down so much today, Palantir, and kind of driving the market sell-off happening? Well, Palantir jumped 20% in the past month, nearly 30% in the past 3 months. And even though they hit their numbers, just sales off happening here on Palantir. But again, home markets are selling off in big numbers today as well for them. When we come back later on and look at stocks, Wingstop, Uber Technologies, and Yum Brands is something in the news. Yum Brands, of course, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, KFC owner. Yum Brands is what we'll look at here coming up as well. But as we all know, right, the standoff of the government being closed, it's a lengthy one, and it's all, of course, between President Trump, Democratic leaders. Yeah, it's about to become the longest government shutdown in American history. That happens this week. If it continues until Wednesday, and by the way, it's going to continue until Wednesday, the one side does not have an appetite to open up the government, right? They're steadfast in voting against that coming up here. But it's going to shatter the old record, which was set during Trump's first term for the government lockout. That was a 35-day federal closure back in 2018 in the later part of that year. And it went into early 2019. Well, that resulted from a fight over Trump's demand for a border wall. Democrats, of course, did not want to fund that border wall at that time. And 35-day history, a closure at that time. We're about to surpass that coming up on Wednesday of this week. So no end in sight. We know there's a big battle on the SNAP stuff still, government health care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just sitting there out there. Now, here's the interesting side of it, right? We talked a lot about TSA, air traffic controllers being severely affected by this, military, the paychecks, et cetera. But the other thing that people aren't thinking about, right? We've had a lot of talk about the SNAP side. Well, there's a big wave of closures happening to Head Start centers across the country. Well, that if you don't know what that is, it's childcare for parents that have to go to work, right? And that's going to leave parents that work scrambling for childcare, and and what are they going to do with their kids? Well, they have to go to work, et cetera, right? And not only that, the Head Start centers tend to be in the area where the neediest children are at as well, out of preschool, parents in lesser well-to-do areas struggling with that side. So it's basically affecting those communities. Dozens of centers are missing out on federal grant payments. They were due to arrive November 1st, did not show up. Some of these places say they're going to close indefinitely. Others are basically either staying afloat with emergency funding from local governments and school districts, or they're just closing out and until the funding comes back as well. So that means Head Start students, those come from low-income households, homeless people, or even those in foster care for children. Well, they're going to miss out on preschool. In that preschool, they're fed 2 meals a day, sometimes 3, depending on the situation. They receive therapy in that environment as well that is needed as well for their development. So it's bigger than just school learning here with these Head Start programs. A half dozen Head Start programs never even received their grants that were anticipated in October. So some of them are behind in October, but now there's 140 programs that have not received their annual infusion of federal funding here going into November. So the program has the capacity to assist 65,000 preschoolers and expected parents in that Head Start program, and those are starting to shutter now as we are dealing with this government shutdown. So it's getting to the point now, it's bigger affection, right? We talked about SNAP and the food side. Now, Head Start, we're affecting the children out there as we continue to move forward in the government shutdown. Now let's go and look at, from the government side of things, let's move over and look at some job opening stuff before we get into some company things. Job openings in October did slump to the lowest level since February of 2021. This is a story that's just hitting the wire here right now, so no graphics or anything on it as well. But Indeed's dashboard, of course, government reporting is shut down right now with the government closure, but we have the private sector, right? Indeed's dashboard of indicators has also showed a decline in salary offerings as job advertisements have declined as well. So not just our job positions looking availability closing a little bit, but also the money associated with those job openings are shrinking as well moving forward. So 4.5 years is the last time we were this low in terms of employment opportunities as well. So this is basically Indeed's job posting index fell to 101.9 as of October 24th. And then that's the lowest since February of 2021. And that uses basically that was basically the 100 what that level was at back in that time frame of February of 2021. So the level represents a 0.5% decline from the beginning of the month and a 3.5% tumble just from mid-August by itself. As well, that was the latest point when the Bureau of Labor Statistic data was available was in August. So under normal conditions, the BLS on Tuesday would have reported the monthly job openings and labor turnover survey, but and the Federal Reserve looks at that number, but obviously the government shutdown means that report is not coming. So, the JOLTS report for August, an indication of ongoing declining in openings. So, you know, the economy looks to be trending down even without those government numbers, and we've seen it a lot with layoffs with a lot of these bigger companies out there, Amazon, Meta, et cetera. A lot of those are being replaced by AI, but we're seeing those layoffs happen, and not all bad news out there for companies, right? For instance, Nintendo, Japanese video game maker, the Switch 2, you're probably familiar with out there. Well, their net profit actually jumped 85% in April through September from the year before. Yeah, that's a big jump there. Well, the sales more than doubled. Why? Well, the launch of that Switch 2 console in June is the major reason why from Nintendo announced out there. So if you don't know, Nintendo is based in, the capital there of Kyoto, Japan. It said its profit for the half year totaled 198.9 billion yen, which comes out to about $1.3 billion. That's their profit, folks. Half year profit. That was up from 108.6 billion yen the year before. $90 billion increase in profit for Nintendo. Remember when they delayed it because of tariffs? Yeah, they could have charged the right amount for it, right? Sales for the first half of this fiscal year rose to about 1.2 trillion yen, which comes out to about $7.1 billion, and way up from 523 billion yen from the same period in 24. So, Nintendo, they don't break down their quarterly sales. Being a Japanese company, they don't require quarterly numbers over there. But we know Nintendo's video game sales were solid, obviously. No new movies revenue came from its content business because that slowed down. No movies out in terms of like Super Mario Brothers, the movie, etc., from the year before in 2024. Nintendo did raise its profit forecast for the full fiscal year through March 2026. It was up to $2.3 billion, right, or 350 billion yen for Nintendo. It had expected a 300 billion yen profit, basically 1.9 billion American dollars, was their expectation level before. So they raised it up. Was that about $400 million is what they raised it up at that point? Yeah. They also raised the forecast for Switch 2 consoles. They moved that forecast to 19 million units. Earlier, they said they would only sell 15 million units of that Switch 2 in this time frame as well. Nintendo has sold more than 10 million Switch 2s by the end of September. The Switch 2 game software, includes Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong, Bonanza are two popular games sold with it as well. Sales of the older Nintendo Switch, well, obviously those have fallen out there as well. But Switch game sales are still going strong because they can be played on Switch 2 machines. So those old games, at least, are still going out there as well. And then if you talk to analysts, well, they expect Nintendo's earnings to stay strong. Why? Upcoming holiday season coming up as well, where Nintendo tends to do well. Their games are more family-oriented. So those tend to go well in that aspect as well. They expect key new games in the Pokemon and Kirby franchises to come out for the holiday season and keep that Nintendo growth sailing out there. And so Nintendo doing well and stuff. And we've talked about this regrowth on Starbucks a lot, right? How they're trying to rebrand, trying to redo their business, get people back into their stores from the competition, etc. They hit the what? The $1 billion mark here for deliveries of their coffee and food here this year. Well, interesting enough, over in China, they've struggled a little bit over in that market. And Starbucks came out yesterday and they said they're forming a joint venture with a Chinese investment firm. And that investment firm is Boyo Capital. And what they're going to do is they're going to operate Starbucks stores over in China. Under this agreement, Boyo will acquire 60% interest in Starbucks retail operations in that country of China. It's valued at $4 billion in order to get that $60 billion stake of that China Enterprises. Starbucks will retain a 40% interest in the joint venture. They will own and license the Starbucks brand in China as well. Starbucks said its business in China will have a total value of more than $13 billion. Now, that does include proceeds from the sale of the controlling interest to Boyu, and then the value of its 40% stake and the value of its royalties that they're selling also. Starbucks entered China's market about 30 years ago. It's been credited with growing call for coffee culture there in China, right? Good or bad, it's growing that culture there. China's Starbucks' second largest market outside of the U.S. 8,000 locations throughout China, but they've had struggles there as well. Well, they've struggled specifically in China because of cheap, fast-growing Chinese startups like Luckin Coffee is a big one over there in China. Kind of what they're dealing with Dutch Bros here in America, right? Black Rifle Coffee, BlackRock Coffee, kind of struggling with that side as well. Starbucks same-store sales in China have fallen in both of the last 2 fiscal years. And the CEO of Starbucks, Brian Niccol, of course, just hired on a year or so ago. Well, he said the Boyu shares Starbucks committed, they share the same commitment, I should say, to providing a great experience for both customers and employees. He also said that they're going to help Starbucks achieve its goal of growing to 20,000 stores in China over a time, but he did not say the time frame to get to that 20,000. Of course, they're at 8,000 now. The Starbucks Chinese headquarters, if you ever need to go, well, it's going to remain in Shanghai. Boyu Capital, they have offices in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Beijing if you're job hopping there and want to move into that area. The company said they do expect to finalize the deal in the second quarter of Starbucks' 2026 fiscal year. Coming up, their fiscal year just began here on September 29th, which means early part of 2026 is when you expect this deal for the Chinese operations of Starbucks deal to be completed at that point. So Starbucks making some moves to try to improve their business and giving up some control over there as well in China. And, we talk a lot about the penny situation throughout here. And now Kroger, right? You shop at Fry's specifically. Well, Kroger, well, they want to talk to you. They want to talk to you about your pennies out there as well. So, Donald Trump, of course, ordered the U.S. Mint to stop making pennies earlier this year, and there's a big shortage on them. Well, Kroger has begun asking shoppers who prefer to pay cash to do so with exact change. The retailer has posted signs requesting the exact coinage needed. So Kroger is so far not refusing pennies or even cash payments in general, but they are legally allowed to say no cash payments for them out there. It's simple. Round it up, man. Or round it down, or if you're paying cash, like if you don't have pennies, I'm not going to fight you over that. I'm not going to fight you over 2 or 3 pennies. That you owe me back. But since then, so basically, Kroger now asking, and I saw this actually in a Fry's I was at the other day, here in town, believe it or not, as well. So Congress is considering a bill to formalize the end of the penny and require transactions to be rounded to the nearest nickel. That's going to become a law here, folks, coming up probably. Well, we got to get the government open first before that can happen. But we're going to see more and more companies talk about that with the penny situation out there, and kind of interesting to see what we're dealing with. And when we come back here at McCollum on Business, we're going to keep the show rolling. I told you we're going to look at Wingstop, Uber Technologies, and then Yum Brands. And we kind of got some more details on what's happening with Yum Brands in terms of an exploration of a company that is underneath them. We'll talk about that. That'll be our first story, plus local stories coming your way. Come on back. It's McCollum on Business. And we're back here at McCollum on Business. As you just saw there in that commercial break, the Real Matrix advertisement there tomorrow, Wednesday at noon. The new episodes here of the Real Matrix comes out. It'll be episode 7 for y'all. If you missed any of the first ones, up here on demand at Robat TV, there's a free channel for it. You see it on your screen. The Real Matrix is there. Of course, it's also on the YouTube channel of the shows that we produce. Around here at Robat TV as well. The YouTube channel, just search The Real Matrix on YouTube. It'll pop right up. And then, of course, free podcasts for The Real Matrix on all your favorite podcast systems out there. Just search The Real Matrix on wherever you listen to podcasts. It'll pop up for you as well. New episode, noon on Wednesdays here for the foreseeable future. We've got those ready to go, and you got the main event live here at Robat TV, 8 to 10 a.m. on demand at Robat TV, obviously on the free YouTube page and your free podcast system out there, folks. Check out me, 17-year NFL veteran Dale Hellestray, and Bruce Cooper comes in on Tuesdays here during the football season. Great to have Bruce in. Had a spirited debate over the Arizona Cardinals' victory over your Dallas Cowboys last night. That is up on demand as well on the YouTube page, free podcast system. As soon as we're done recording here, we come to you live at 11 o'clock here, Robat TV. Obviously on demand as well on Robat TV and the YouTube page. No podcast system for this show. And then the pit stop. We're doing one more episode, and because of some stuff being done around the studio here, well, we're not going to get the pit stop done today. It'll be up tomorrow for you guys as we've had to push it back. Unfortunate timing. So the pit stop will be up for the end of the season show tomorrow for you out there for the pit stop. And then a break for that show until around February. We'll do some other stuff during this off time as new breaks, but no new shows at least until the new season starts in February of next year. But check out the pit stop as well for me. Free podcast systems as well, YouTube page, and of course here at Robat TV. And with all that being said, let's get right back into that Market Watch. Big sell-off happening today. And like I said, AI valuations in terms of the AI stocks. What's happened is Perplexity AI has accused Amazon of bullying with legal threat over Comet Browser. We have those stocks going on. You have the money that like Meta, Amazon, etc., Google are putting into the AI cores and systems and data centers, all just causing some worriness on the market. We've seen it happen before out there, and that's what's happening today, right? Dow Jones 239 points down right now. The S&P 500 is down to 68 points. Nasdaq's down 410 points. here on this Tuesday, and then the Russell 2K, right? The small cap index is down 33 points here as we go through this Tuesday. Then Bitcoin, now it's still above the 101,000 level, but it did drop down below 100,000 for a little bit here today. 101,462,000 for Bitcoin today. So sell off pretty much across the board here on the market, and stocks we're paying attention to. It's lunchtime. Let's talk a little Wingstop out there. One of the few restaurant stores that are doing very well here in this current economy. And what we're looking at, well, they're up big today, 11.62% right now. They were up over 14% earlier today. Well, Wingstop reported same store sales growth, 5.6%. That's a huge number here from what we're seeing from other fast food places out there. That came in much higher than the 3.2% growth estimate that people were expected. Same store sales are a struggle for a lot of these companies, specifically in the fast food world. Wingstop bucking that trend still, as they've been kind of one of the only companies to buck that trend here this year. And then let's look at Uber, right? Technologies. That's that ride sharing company. Well, they're down big today, 5.52% right now. Was down over 7% about an hour before showtime. Well, their fourth quarter adjusted numbers will range between 2.41 and 2.51 billion dollars. Well, the expectation was 2.47 billion dollars, and they adjusted that number down, and that's why Uber is down today, 5.38% as well. Their third quarter revenue did beat expectations. The revenue was $13.47 billion. The expectation was only $13.28 billion. So they beat that number and then revised their number down. And when you do that, your stock generally goes down. That's why they're down 5.39% here today. And then finally, lunchtime, right? I'm getting hungry. Yum Brands is the stock we are going to look at this. And I legitimately am getting hungry. 7.04% up for Yum Brands here today. They reported quarterly earnings and revenue growth. They said they had strong demand with Taco Bell and improved U.S. sales at KFC, which has been kind of their anchor these last several years, KFC. Well, the one brand that it struggled a little bit was Pizza Hut, and Yum Brands announced plans to review strategic options specifically for Pizza Hut out there, meaning sale could be imminent for Pizza Hut away from Yum Brands out there. And that's going to be, a little bit more detailed story here as we get into the local stories and update here on this Yum side, right? So in terms of the announcement here from Yum Brands, here's the quote here's what they said on the conference call. The Pizza Hut team has been working hard to address business and category challenges. However, Pizza Hut's performance indicates the need to take additional action to help the brand realize its full value. And that full value may be better executed outside of Yum Brands. That came from the CEO of Yum Brands, and he said that in a statement with this reporting. The company has not set a deadline or even a timetable at all for the review process on what to do with Pizza Hut. Yum did not specify what the review's range of strategic options include. They didn't talk about any potential outcomes that that they're expecting to happen, but outcomes could be right an outright divestiture, if I can say that word. Getting somebody else involved with Pizza Hut, kind of like a joint venture, or just completely sell the chain off to somebody else. Are obviously the main options that could be involved here. Pizza Hut has been a part of the brands here, Yum Brands, with KFC and Taco Bell for decades. That was back when PepsiCo still owned the chains and spun them off into Yum Brands. The beverage giant of Pepsi spun off the restaurants back in 1997, and they, of course, called it something else before. It was like Tricorn or Tricon or something beforehand. Then they were renamed to Yum Brands after that spinoff happened. So these guys have been at the hip for a long time. Now Pizza Hut struggles and not able to get through. And right, Domino's is doing really well in this delivery pizza space. But Pizza Hut continues to struggle there. And Yum Brands trying to figure out what they're going to do with that. And, A local company, well, at least a company that has a presence here out there. We're talking about Honeywell. Well, we know they're spinning off their businesses into individual businesses, a la GE did back in the day. And one of those companies is going to be Honeywell Aerospace, which, like I said, we know will have a presence still here in the Valley. Well, Honeywell announced the appointment of Jim Courier as president and chief executive officer of that Honeywell Aerospace. That's the company that will become an independent, publicly traded company after the spinoff happens. And that spinoff is expected to be done in the second half of 2026. Honeywell also announced that Craig Arnold has been selected to serve as chairman of the Honeywell Aerospace Board of Directors. Arnold will assume that role in a non executive board chair upon the completion of Honeywell Aerospace's planned spinoff in 2026. So, in the interim, he's going to serve as Honeywell's board of directors effective immediately. That's for Mr. Arnold. Now, as a standalone company for Honeywell Aerospace, and they're spinning off two other companies as well, but Honeywell Aerospace will be one of the largest publicly listed pure play aerospace suppliers. More than $15 billion in 2024 sales for that company alone being spun off. Well, Mr. Courier has served as the president and CEO of Honeywell Aerospace Technologies business since 2023. Previously, he spent nearly 2 decades in senior roles across the globe at Honeywell, including as president of the Electric Solutions business, president of the company's aftermarket organization that's across Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India. He was vice president of Airlines North America under his resume with Honeywell. So, under his leadership, the aerospace technologies business has strengthened its position and is now a leading aerospace and defense supplier as a company. So, they're staying with somebody that's been running it and running it successfully to be CEO here as the spinoff occurs next year for Honeywell. And like I said, that's going to have a space here in the aerospace division here in Phoenix as well. We've gone out there and interesting here, right? This is an old debate. It's kind of rearing its ugly head again here, and now it's hitting the walls of Congress again. But the Mexican gray wolves back in long time ago were placed on the protected species list as well. Now, a lot of cattle farmers across the Southwest, specifically in Arizona, but it's moving into New Mexico as well. Those guys have difficult decisions, right, over their cattle because they get attacked by these wolves as they need to eat, etc. out there. So there's a big debate that's coming back to life again over conservation and livestock losses, between the two sides. The first captive wolves were released in the wild back in 1998, all part of that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's recovery efforts of the Mexican gray wolf. Supporters of the wolf say moving the predator, and he's an apex predator as well, would be detrimental to the overall ecosystem. Well, it's going to affect deer and elk populations and the vegetation that they consume. Obviously, without the wolves, well, more deer and elk will survive, grow at bigger numbers, detriment to the vegetation side. Well, ranchers, they're obviously concerned about their cattle that they pay for, right? But they argue that the wolves' mere presence actually puts additional pressure on other predators like mountain lions, bears, coyotes, because they take away natural prey of those apex predators as well. So the thing about this, why is this debate coming back up? Well, it's reached Washington, D.C. again, right? Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar, he's introduced legislation to delist the Mexican wolf from the Endangered Species Act. Because ranchers down there can't do anything. You can't kill things on the Extinction Act there. And so the ranchers, they have hard choices. It just attacked my cattle. Can't get rid of it. It's a thing, and those are losses for those ranchers, right? Conservation leaders, well, they're urging for a chance to find solutions before delisting the animals from that list. Jason Capps, he's an interagency wolf team lead for the Arizona GFD. He said the goal is to protect both the species and people's livelihoods and find that medium. Of course they say that, but the gray wolves don't care. They're just trying to survive out there in the deserts, etc. And I was reading a supplement to this story that I believe we got from KJazz. But I was reading a supplemental side of the story. It's affecting New Mexico and into Texas now. as drought down there in southern Arizona and northern Mexico is leading a lot of these Mexican gray wolves to migrate into other areas now. So they're starting to be affected by them in those other side of things. So that, if you, I remember that debate very well when they started releasing them, kind of rearing its head again here in 2025. And interesting thing here, Phoenix Fire Department, well, their emergency response times might get better, right? That's something you don't hear. We're hearing a lot of cutbacks. We're hearing a lot of more expansion times because, right, of labor, budgeting, etc. Well, the citywide emergency response times by that Phoenix Fire Department is actually better than the national standard in critical situations requiring an ambulance. So they're already better than the national standard, right? This was all presented, and it was a presentation scheduled for this Wednesday's Public Safety Subcommittee meeting coming up in the legislature. But citywide emergency response times are above the national standard in three other categories. Also, new sales tax revenue is aiming to cut those times by hiring more firefighters. So that's the argument here coming up in this deal. So they're really good and responding, getting people the help they need, but they're lacking in other areas out there, and so they're looking to get new sales tax revenues to hire more firefighters and move on. So something to pay attention to if you live in the Phoenix area, taxes wise, where your money's going. All coming up on Wednesday with that meeting here in the city of Phoenix. And now, you ever go on a trip and you're like, man, wish I could bring my dog. Not, you can, like Southwest allows pets, but you ever want your dog to sit next to you or something on the plane? Well, there's a service out there. It's an aviation service for pets and their owners. It's expanding to Scottsdale Airport here in 2026. This is Retrieve Air, is what it's called. You might have seen it on Shark Tank, actually. It operates out of a handful of U.S. cities. Currently, it allows passengers to fly side by side with your pets. So no putting them in a kennel down underneath the plane. They get beverage service too here with Retrieve Air. $800,000 is what they rounded up there by being and striking a deal on Shark Tank, and that's where a lot of people heard about them. They do operate in specific cities. They're not everywhere, but Retrieve Air does seek federal approval through the Department of Defense and does check in with local airport authority, during their flight time. So it's it's not a fly-by-night airplane company, right? Brenton Miller is the company founder and CEO of Retrieve Air. The expansion to Scottsdale, why are they moving there? Popular demand. They talk to people all the time. They get feedback. The number one city where they don't go to now that people wanted to go to? Phoenix, actually, Scottsdale area. So that's why they're expanding into that in 2026. So you want your dog to lay next to you, sit next to you on a plane? There you go. Check out Retrieve Air and see where they go out there as well. So, and finally, one of Phoenix Business Journal's fastest growing private companies. It's been on their list for a lot of times now. Well, now they're being acquired. Yes, $175 million transaction. And I find it interesting on who owns this company. I'm not saying there's bad deeds going on. I'm just saying not every day your mayor owns it, right? It's a Peoria-based body armor manufacturing company. You might have heard of them, called TYR Technical. Well, they've entered into that agreement to be acquired by a company out of Florida, Jacksonville to be specific. It's called Cadre Holdings. It's in a deal that's projected to close in the first half of 2026. Cadre Holdings manufactures and distributes safety and survivability equipment used by law enforcement, first responders, and military globally. Cadre's brands do include Safari Land and Med-Eng, if you know those brands out there. TYR Tactical, well, it was founded in 2010 by Jack Beck and Jason Beck. If Jason Beck's name sounds familiar, if you're a West Sider, well, he's also the mayor of Peoria. So I've heard a lot of interviews on him being the mayor, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, I know that guy. The company also has facilities in El Paso, Texas, Ontario, Canada, and Aarhus, Denmark, of all places, for them. So another local company and a successful one, and a quickly growing one and being recognized by the Business Journal in terms of small businesses here in Arizona with big growth potential. Well, losing them to a parent company over in Florida, and we don't know what that means for what they do here if they're going to leave the valley or the situation. But congratulations to the mayor of Peoria. Good for him. Hey, folks, I appreciate you joining us here from McCollum on Business here on this Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, for our show at 11 o'clock. Come and join us. Catch us on YouTube. Like the page as well. Search the McCollum on Business. It'll come right up for you as well. And we'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Have a great Tuesday night.